Hello, dear students. So, we have finished the kingdoms, the five kingdoms which were given by R.H. Whitaker. We have studied in enough detail about the five kingdoms: Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. Right? Now, after having studied these, we will study about some organisms or so called organisms which actually were not considered, which were not studied by R.H. Whitaker. Okay, though these organisms were known at that time by the scientific community, but still Whitaker could not decide where to place these organisms or these sort of entities. Okay, so these are viruses, viroids, and lichens. Currently, viruses and viroids are not considered as true cellular organisms. However, lichens are considered as true organisms, the living beings, because they possess the characteristics and properties which are shared by the uh, living beings, living organisms, and they have the defining features of the living organisms, of the living beings. So now first we will discuss about viruses in brief detail, and then we will see what are the viroids, and finally we will finish this chapter by discussing the lichens. Okay, so viruses, viroids, and lichens, they were actually not considered by R.H. Whitaker. So viruses, as you all are familiar, that the common cold is caused by the viruses, right? Common cold, where you have symptom of running nose and fever and a little bit body ache or body pain. So this common cold is caused by viruses. The category of the viruses which causes this common cold is called as rhinovirus. Okay, RHINO, rhinovirus. And let me tell you, as nowadays the disease and the pandemic caused by coronavirus is very common, and you all are familiar with it. So, common cold virus or this rhinovirus is also a kind of the coronavirus. Okay, so coronavirus is a large family of viruses, and this COVID-19 is a member of the coronavirus, and the common cold virus is also a member of the coronavirus. So that means if you say a general name coronavirus, that means you are referring to a family of the viruses which contains so many species, so many viruses. And if you say COVID-19, that means this is a particular species of the virus which has caused this COVID-19 disease. Okay, so now you have got familiar. Let me tell you that the viruses are not truly living beings, they are not true organisms, and they don't have the protoplasm. The protoplasm is actually the cellular basis of life. Anything which does not have protoplasm uh, is not considered as a living being. So they don't have the protoplasm. That means they don't have the proper cellular structure, and that is why sometimes they are referred as non-cellular organisms. Okay, so here I have written non-cellular organisms. So however, when uh, they infect a particular cell, be it a plant cell or animal cell or some other cell type, they will uh, enter inside the cell, and then they will take over the machinery of that particular cell, of the host cell. That means they will start controlling the cytoplasmic machinery, the machinery which is inside the cell, those components of the cell which do the protein synthesis and other activities of the cell. They are now under the control of the genome of the virus. Okay, so this is a very characteristic feature, that when a virus is inside a cell, inside the host cell, it takes over the machinery of that particular host cell after the infection, and it behaves as a living organism. It directs the synthesis according to its own needs, and it synthesizes the proteins or RNA and DNA as per its need. However, when a virus is outside the cell, then it is actually a inert material, and outside the living cell, the virus exists as a inert crystalline structure. It does not have any protoplasm or cytoplasm. It has only very basic structure, which we will be discussing very shortly. Now, to go into the history of the virus, the viruses were actually uh, known by the Louis Pasteur. So he had a little idea about viruses. So he coined the term virus much before the details about the virus were known. So the term virus was coined or given by the French scientist Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur is a very famous microbiologist. Okay, the toned milk which you see nowadays. So this toning process for the milk is called as pasteurization, and pasteurization was given by Louis Pasteur. What is the purpose or function of the pasteurization? Pasteurization is actually short duration heating of the material, usually the food product. Many times we know the pasteurization with the example of the milk, okay, pasteurized milk or toned milk. So in the pasteurized milk, you heat the milk to a higher temperature, so that the microorganisms which might be present over there, they get killed. And once the temperature comes to normal, because the organisms have been killed, they do not regrow again. So it is saved from the rotting or from getting waste. So Louis Pasteur had given the term virus, and this disease was first studied. The viral disease or a particular virus was first disease in the tobacco mosaic viral disease or TMV disease. Okay, so tobacco mosaic viral disease or tobacco mosaic disease was studied by a Russian scientist uh, Ivanovsky, and he in 1892 published his findings. And Ivanovsky actually found that the disease of the tobacco mosaic disease is caused by certain microscopic organisms which are much smaller than the bacteria. And how he proposed that? Actually, during the Ivanovsky's time, it was known that bacteria are prokaryotic organisms and they have a certain small size, and there were filters which were used for sterilization. Even now they are used even today. So what happened, that he filtered that particular infected plant extract with those filters through which bacteria cannot pass. Still he found that the material remains infectious. That means the microbes can pass through the filters. So that means the disease which is caused by TMV or tobacco mosaic disease, uh, causing virus, actually is smaller than the bacteria. So this disease or TMV disease actually is not caused by the bacteria, but some organisms which are even smaller than the bacteria. This was the finding by Russian scientist Ivanovsky in 1892. Later on, after about 6 years, in 1898, Bizernike or Bizerinek, okay, so some people pronounce it as Bizernike, some people call it Bizerinek. So M.W. Bizerinek again studied the tobacco mosaic disease, and he extracted he made the extract from the tobacco mosaic disease plant, and then he sprayed this extract over other healthy tobacco plants, and he found that those healthy plants now have acquired the disease and they have become ill or sick. That means the disease has been spread to the healthy tobacco plants now by using these extracts. And based on this finding, Bizerinek actually proposed a concept which is defined by this phrase, contagium vivum fluidum. So contagium vivum fluidum means that this disease is caused by certain fluid, because till that time bacteria were considered the smallest organism, and because this was a fluid and it could pass through the bacteria resistant filters, so he said that this is a fluid which is infectious, and this is a sort of living fluid. So contagium vivum fluidum means infectious living fluid. Okay. So Bijerinek actually recognized the infectious nature of that particular fluid. However, he called that fluid a living fluid. Okay. Later on, W.M. Stanley, who was working on the proteins. Okay. We will study more about many biomolecules, many chemicals like proteins, carbohydrates, amino acids, and nucleic acids, DNA, RNA. These things we will study in coming chapters in the chapter of biomolecule. However, let me tell you here that Stanley was studying proteins, and it was already known that if you take pure protein, it is possible to crystallize them, to get them their crystals. Okay. And if it is a living matter, if it is a living organism, it will not crystallize. Okay. Or some other substances which are amorphous in nature will also not crystallize. So living organisms were known that they never crystallize. However, he found that the viruses could be crystallized, and he successfully crystallized the viruses. And this was sort of a surprising discovery, and that indicated that the viruses, because they can now be crystallized, are they proteins. So, however, it became clear by W.M. Stanley's discovery that the viruses actually contain a substantial amount of the protein, a huge amount of the protein, which makes the crystals upon favorable conditions. Okay. So in this way, slowly more and more detail started coming out, and we know quite a lot of detail about the viruses, and so many viruses, thousands of viruses are known today. Okay. So if you see how do they live, or how do they survive themselves, actually the viruses are considered as parasites, and they are considered as obligate parasites. That means compulsorily they are parasites. What does it mean? It means that they can exist only as a parasites, and those parasites which are not always parasitic, rather they can exist on some other mode also, they are called as facultative parasites. However, viruses are obligate parasites. That means they always exist as parasites, otherwise they cannot exist. Okay. So this is a very crucial and very important feature, and you must know it. So now, after a lot of research and scientific findings, after a lot of experimentation, it has been found that the viruses actually are made up of mainly two components. Okay. Some other things may also be present rarely, but for your syllabus, you just should know that viruses consist of two major components. Uh, the outer covering is called as protein coat, and protein coat is actually the major component, and it is responsible for crystallization of the viruses. This protein is also called as capsid. So this is a technical term. Capsid means the protein coat of the virus. Okay. Then inside that particular protein coat, there is genetic material which is present, and that genetic material actually gives the characteristic to the virus. So this genetic material may consist either of DNA or RNA, and both these materials, DNA or RNA, they can exist as single stranded or double stranded. Okay, so that means there are four possibilities. The viruses can contain genetic material as single stranded DNA, or ssDNA, or double stranded DNA, or dsDNA, single stranded RNA or ssRNA, dsRNA or double stranded RNA. Okay. So, however, inside a intact crystalline inert virus, you will find the protein code plus one of these genetic materials and not both. That means a virus will not contain DNA as well as protein at the same time. Okay, so this is also important. You should know sometimes questions are framed based on these informations. Uh, uh, and MCQs are framed on this information. So, what are actually viruses? Viruses are made up of the protein and nucleic acid. That means genetic material. So, DNA and RNA are called as nucleic acid. Okay. So, if we want to say in a single term, then we can call that viruses are actually nucleoprotein particles. Okay. Nucleoprotein means nucleic acid and protein. So, nucleoprotein particles are viruses, and the genome or the genetic material of the virus is capable of taking over the host machinery and host cell, and then it directs the host cell to behave the way virus wants. In other words, the genetic material of the virus or the DNA or RNA, whatever is present as a genome of the virus, once it enters the host cell, this actually is capable of deciding the fate of host cell according to its own need. So, in other words, we can say that the virus has the genome which is infectious because the protein code remains outside after the infection. The protein code remains outside the cell and the genome enters inside the cell. So, because the only genome enters, only the RNA or DNA whichever is present enters inside the cell and it affects the host cell. That means the genome of the virus is infectious. Okay, so that is why viruses have the infectious genome, whether it is DNA or RNA. So this is a very important concept and you should be knowing it. Okay, so usually we don't use the word infectious genome, but once you are told that there is some infectious genome, you must know that this should belong to a virus. Okay, infectious genome also has another implication. Suppose you are studying a genome and you are doing the isolation or purification of the genome, and if it is infectious, what will happen? That particular genome can enter inside your cells and it can cause you a disease. So it becomes very dangerous to work with. Okay, so scientists have to take very great precautions to study or to explore these infectious viruses. That is why you should have seen in televisions or in some certain videos about the coronavirus that when the sample is taken from the patients, a very extreme and elaborate care is taken to collect the samples, because otherwise the doctors or the health workers which are collecting the sample, they will get infected with the virus. Okay, so that is the main reason why it happens. Now these viruses can either infect the plant, they can either infect the animals, or they can also infect some fungi, they can also infect other bacteria also. Okay, so the viruses are parasitic, they are obligate parasite and they can parasitize on a whole range of organisms. Okay, so most of the plant viruses, they are usually single stranded RNA viruses. That means their genetic material will contain single stranded RNA usually. Okay, however, animal viruses have more diversity and more variety, and animal viruses may contain single stranded RNA or double stranded RNA or double stranded DNA as their genetic material. However, single stranded DNA as genetic material of the animal viruses has uh, rarely been found. So the third category of the bacteriophages, that means the viruses which kill or eat the bacteria. They are called as bacteriophages. So they are the viruses which attack and which parasitize on the bacteria. So bacteriophages are usually double-stranded DNA viruses. Okay, and the details of the bacteriophages have been greatly studied, and they are sort of very well understood viruses. So the capsid or the protein coat of the bacteriophages is usually makes a very beautiful outer covering, which is called as capsid, and capsid consists of small subunits called as capsomeres. So capsomeres are the monomers or the subunits which actually assemble together and make the capsid or the protein coat which covers the genetic material. So capsomeres have the responsibility to make the capsid and protect the genetic material of DNA or RNA which is present inside. Moreover, capsid has a specific geometrical form. It has a very specific shape. Okay, so if you see this figure 2.6, here if you focus figure 2.6b, here it is shown the structure of the bacteriophage. You will see that this head like structure, this is actually capsid. Okay, so this capsid and this is also part of the capsid only, and inside this you will have the genetic material. So the capsid is made up of small subunits called capsomeres, and the structure of the capsids is usually very geometric in nature. Here you can see this sheath is actually helical structure, and then this is actually polyhedral. So specific geometrical forms like polyhedral or cuboidal or helical shapes will be present for the viruses, including the bacteriophages. Here in figure 2.6a, you have the tobacco mosaic virus. You can see that this red chain-like structure, which is RNA, and it serves as a genetic material, but it is coated outside by the capsid. Here you see the capsid is made up of small subunits which are called capsomeres, and capsomeres are arranged in a helical manner. Okay, so they will have the specific geometrical form. Now lot of diseases are caused by the viruses. Many diseases are caused in animals which are very famous, like mumps, measles, smallpox, herpes, influenza, and AIDS. AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. AIDS is caused by HIV. What is HIV? HIV is human immunodeficiency virus. So here you should understand and you should know it, being a science student, that AIDS is caused by HIV. HIV is not caused by AIDS. Okay, AIDS is a disease, HIV is a virus. So AIDS is a disease and it is caused by a virus which is called as HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. Similarly, polio virus causes the polio disease. Okay, polio virus is a single stranded RNA virus. So these are the common animal diseases caused by virus. Many diseases are caused in plants also by the viruses, as we have seen the tobacco mosaic disease. So these viruses cause many symptoms in the viruses, like the mosaic formation, then leaf rolling or curling of the leaves are also caused by the viruses, then leaf yellowing, vein clearing or stunted growth, that means dwarfing of the plants, is also caused by the viruses. Okay, so now we have studied in enough detail about the viruses. We have seen what kind of structure is there, how do they survive, how do they infect. They infect the host, the capsid remains outside, the genetic material enters inside the cell and then takes over the machinery, and it directs the synthesis or metabolism of the cells as per its own need, and then forms the proteins or DNA or RNA as the virus itself requires, not as per the requirement of the host cell, right? Then we have seen how it is obligate parasite, what is the history of the discovery, and we have seen that majorly the plant viruses are single stranded RNA viruses. However, animal viruses have more diversity as far as their genetic material is concerned. Okay, so all these details now we have discussed. So these are very important features in your entire syllabus of this year. You have only this much information about the viruses in your basic syllabus. However, we will see some more advanced information maybe in the later classes from the competitive examination point of view. However, we will not be repeating these informations, these things again and again in later chapters. So you should understand it very properly over here itself. And if you have any doubt, just get back to me and ask me. Now we will see another category of the organisms, so-called organisms. They are also not true organisms. They are called as viroids. Okay, so viroids were first discovered in 1971 by T.O. Diener. So T.O. Diener is a scientist who discovered the viroids. Okay, and these viroids were discovered actually in a potato disease. So potato has a disease called as potato spindle tuber disease. So here you can see potato spindle tuber disease. So potato spindle tuber disease was being studied by T.O. Diener, and he found that there is some organism, some infectious agent which is causing this disease. However, when he went into the depth exploration, he found that these organisms are again smaller than the bacteria. And on further investigation, he found that these organisms which are causing the potato spindle tuber disease are even smaller than the viruses. Then it was a surprising thing that even if they are even smaller than the viruses, what it may be. Eventually, after a lot of studies and discoveries, it was found that this disease is caused by only free RNA. There is nothing else. Only free RNA folded upon itself, making a small infectious particle, and it behaves as a infectious agent, as an infectious material, and it can spread the disease from one organism to another organism. So this free RNA means there is no protein coat. It is not protected by any protective covering of the capsid or protein coat, and it is free RNA just folded upon itself, and it protects itself, but it can cause disease. It is again an infectious genome. So the viroids are again infectious agents. They are non-cellular organisms, and they are again obligate parasites, and they are made up of only RNA, which is free RNA, and no protein coat is present. One more important feature associated with viroids is that they have this genome, which is RNA, with a very small size. Okay, so this is a very small sized RNA. That means the molecular weight of the viroids will be much lesser than the genome of the virus. Okay, so these two important things you must remember, that the genome size is smaller than the genome of virus, and the famous disease caused by viroids is potato spindle tuber disease, and viroids were discovered by T.O. Diener. Now we come to the last topic, which is lichens. Lichens are actually symbiotic organisms. That means here the lichens are formed by two organisms which remain attached to each other. They live in close relationship with each other. Okay, so the two kinds of organisms, algae and fungi, they live in close association and they benefit from each other. That is why they are called as symbionts. The algal component is called as phycobiont, and because algae have the photosynthetic pigment chlorophyll and they perform the photosynthesis, the phycobiont or algal component is a phototrophic organism, and it is a autotrophic component. It can synthesize its own food. And how it helps the other partner which is living in close relationship, it provides the food synthesized by this phycobiont to the fungal component. Okay, fungal component is also called as mycobiont, and mycobiont are fungi, as you all know that they are heterotrophs. They cannot synthesize their own foods. However, they provide shelter and they absorb mineral and water from the soil or from their surroundings, and then they supply these mineral and water to the algae, and they provide shelter. That means they protect the algal component, and algal component in turn gives the food which is synthesized by the photosynthesis process to the fungal component or the microbiome component. In this way, both benefit from each other, and they live in a great union or in a very beneficial relationship with each other. Lichens are actually very famous organisms because they are a very good pollution indicators. Okay, how do they indicate the pollution? If a region, if an area is polluted, the lichens will start disappearing from that area. So disappearance of the lichens is the first indicator of the increasing pollution level. Then they are also the first colonizers. They are first to disappear upon the pollution, and they are the first organism to appear on a uh, on a sort of virgin land. If there is some area like Antarctica or mountains where no organism lives over there, okay, the first organism of any kind which will start colonizing and living there, and it will make its population over there are the lichens. Okay, so they are considered as first colonizers or the pioneer organisms or pioneer species. More detail about the pioneer species or the colonizers we will be studying uh, in the next year when we study succession and ecology. So now, after having discussed the viruses, the viroids and lichens, all of these three organisms were not included by R.H. Whitaker in his classification. Now these is known that lichens have the two components, algal and fungal, that means phycobiont and mycobiont. So algae, the unicellular algae are included in the protista, and fungi are included in the kingdom fungi. However, the viruses and viroids, they are not cellular, they are not having any cellular organization, so they are not considered as a truly living organisms, and they are not part of the five kingdom classification. Okay, so now we will stop over here. I think that we have discussed about the biological diversity and biological classification in enough detail. Now in the next lecture we will start a new chapter. Okay, so keep noting the important points, and if you have any doubts, please ask me. Okay, so okay, thank you, bye bye.